कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजना। यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। यमुना तीर वनचारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। जय ओम विष्णुपद परमहंस प्रव्रजगाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद श्रील अभय चरणानंद भक्ति वेदांत साईं महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नाम आचार्य श्रील ठाकुर हरिदास की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। यमुना मई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन विविधि संस्थापक आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। गौ प्रेमानंदे श्री श्री गौरनिताय की जय। जगन्नाथ बलराम सुभद्रा देवी की जय। श्री श्री रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश की जय। श्री नु द्वारका धाम की जय। नु द्वारका धाम निवासी जन की जय। गौ प्रेमानंदे। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Jai. Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णे स्वधामोपगते धर्मज्ञानादिभिः सह कलौ नष्टदृशामेष पुराणार्को धुनोदितः Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Chapter 23, entitled Devahuti's Lamentation, and we're on today text number 10. Kindly repeat. Devahuti Uvacha Radham Bhat Drijavrisha Etad Amogha Yoga Maya Adhipe Tvai Vibho Tat Avaimi Bharataha Yah Te Abhyudhayi Samayah Sakrit Angasanga Bhuyat Gariyasi Guna Prasavah Satinam Radham Batadvijavrishaitaramogha Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibhotavaimi Bharataha Yaste Bhyudhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyat Gariyasi Gunaham Prasava Satinam Radham Batadvija Virshaitaramogha Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Bharataha Yaste Bhyudhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyat Gariyasi Guna Prasava Satinam Radham Batadvija Prashaitaramogha Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Bharataha Yaste Bhyudhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyat Gariyasi Guna Prasava Satinam Radham Batadvijavrishaitaramogha Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Bharataha Yaste Bhyudhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyat Gariyasi Guna Prasava Satinam Radham Batadvijavrishaitaramogha Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Bharataha Yaste Bhyudhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyadgariyasi vibho. Radham bata dvija varshaitara mogha yoga. Mayadhipe tvaya vibho tavagaimi bhartaha. Yaste dvabhyai samayaha sakradanga sango. Bhuyadgariyasi gunaha prasavasatinam. Ladies. Radham bada dvija varshaitara mogha yoga. Mayadhipe tvaya vibho tadavaimi bhartaha. Yaste bhyadhai samayah sakradanga sango. Bhuyadgariyasi gunaha prasavah satinam. Radham bata dvija varshaitara mogha yoga. Mayadhipe tava vibho. Devahuti uvacha. Devahuti said, Radham, it has been achieved. But indeed, Dvijavarsha, O best of the Brahmanas, Etat, this, Amokha, infallible, Yogamaya, of mystic powers, Adhipe, the master, Twayi, in you, Vibho, O great one, Tat, that, Avaimi, I know, Bharataha, O husband, Yaha, that which, Te, by you, Abhyadhayi, was given, Samayaha, promise, Sakrita, once, Angasangaha, bodily union, Bhuyat, may be, Gariyasi, when very glorious, Gunaha, a great quality, Prasavaha, progeny, Satinam, of chaste women. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder and Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, savior of the modern world, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Devahuti expressed her happiness by uttering the word bata. That means here translated indeed. For she knew that her husband was in a highly elevated, transcendental position and was under the shelter of Yogamaya. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, those who are great souls, Mahatmas, are not under the control of the material energy. The Supreme Lord has two energies, material and spiritual. The living entities are marginal energy. As marginal energy, a person may be under the control of the material energy or the spiritual energy, Yogamaya. Kardama Muni was a great soul, and therefore he was under the spiritual energy, which means he was directly connected with the Supreme Lord. The symptom of this is Krishna consciousness, constant engagement in devotional service. This was known to Devahuti, yet she was anxious to have a son by bodily union with the sage. She reminded her husband of his promise to her parents, quote, I will remain only until the time of Devahuti's pregnancy, end quote. She reminded him that for a chaste woman to have a child by a great personality is most glorious. She wanted to be pregnant, and she prayed for that. The word stri means expansion. By bodily union of the husband and wife, their qualities are expanded. Children born of good parents are expansions of the parents' personal qualifications. Both Kardama Muni and Devahuti were spiritually enlightened. Therefore, she desired from the beginning that first she be pregnant and then she be empowered with the achievement of God's grace and love of God. For a woman, it is a great ambition to have a son of the same quality as a highly qualified husband. Since she had the opportunity to have Kardama Muni as her husband, she also desired to have a child by bodily union. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnanan Shalakaya Chakshur and Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Did we? Okay. So please repeat. Shri Devahuti said, my dear husband, O best of the Brahmanas, I know that you have achieved perfection and are master of all the infallible mystic powers, because you are under the protection of Yogamaya, the transcendental nature. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill, since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantigam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yutaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalata Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Taptakanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Madgaviravi Gopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadevasam Payahapitva Hrishye Yustat Priyajanaha. So Devahuti said, my dear husband, best of the Brahmins, I know that you have achieved perfection and are the master of all the infallible mystic powers because you are under the protection of Yogamaya, the transcendental nature. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill, since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband. Bhatta, the word is used here, and Sridhar Swami first of all points out, she's so excited and jubilant. Bhatta harshe. Harsha means joy. Out of joy she says this. And the idea here is that she's glorifying her husband, first of all, with extreme respect. Best of the Brahmanas, infallible master of Yogamaya, pretty high praise. And Vibho, O great one, O my dear husband, You made a promise. There's always a but. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill. We don't generally have children without bodily union, and so that's necessary. And she's reminding him that it will not be auspicious if our union does not produce someone who can expand our good qualities. Yaste abhyudayi samayasakritanga sango bhuyad gariyasi gunaha prasavaha satinam. This is desired really by all parents, but not just women, but especially for chaste women. It's very important. This is something, this verse actually highlights something that Srila Prabhupada, if you take the trouble to study Srila Prabhupada's letters in particular, you will find that throughout his instructions on the topic of household life, he always reminds, chiefly in those days, his Western disciples, household life is not meant for just bodily union. This is our assumption in modern society. If sense gratification is the aim of life, which everyone assumes, then that means marriage is meant for sense gratification. And if there's a disturbance in the sense gratification, then there's divorce. Generally, the women initiate divorce, statistically. So, this is the first thing that Prabhupada always instructing. This marriage institution, grihastha ashram, it is not meant just for sex life, not just meant for sense enjoyment. And here it's stated very clearly, gariyasi gunaha prasavaha satinam, that it's actually meant to expand the qualities of the family. This is another assumption, erroneous assumption that we make in modern society. I am the center of everything, the individual, me. But that's not really so, actually. In the Vedic conception of life, the central concept is not the individual, but it is your group, and particularly your family, or your jati, your caste, etc. It's a more cooperative mindset. And this is a characteristic actually of Oriental societies in general, but it is given Vedic sanction. So that's another thing to consider. So Devahuti is a great soul, as Prabhupada is saying here. She's conscious of this responsibility. In other words, a person has a responsibility, a householder especially, has a responsibility to expand the good qualities of the family, whatever we do. People are going to judge our spiritual master or our family, either way, by our own character, by our own activities, by whatever we're doing. So we have to be very conscious of that, as Devahuti is. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this verse, he makes it explicit. Yada bhavad banteyam iti strishu nindaiveti bhavaha. She says that if women don't have children, they're criticized. Just like Chanakya Pandit also says, if a sannyasi travels widely, he gains fame. He becomes glorified. If a king travels, he spreads his fame. He's also glorified. If an independent woman travels, she's criticized. This is Chanakya Pandit's opinion. And here it's stated that even if a woman is married but doesn't have children, she's also criticized. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Seems like women cannot do anything right sometimes. But there is a method to the madness, actually. Those who are familiar, those who are socialized in Vedic culture, they can understand this very clearly. Other persons struggle for some time. It takes some time because, what is the word used? We heard already. It's subtle. In chapter 13, Krishna says, spiritual knowledge, even metaphysical knowledge, he says, is actually, it's subtle, so people miss it sometimes. So here we're talking about metaphysical things, the laws of nature, nature of men and women, the nature of the ashrams and the varnas. These things are sometimes a little difficult to understand. Okay, so that's one thing. Jiva Goswami, well, in general, Srila Prabhupada's purport is very closely paraphrasing, really, I should say. Not just translating, but almost word for word. He's just basically saying the same thing that Sridhar Swami has said. Jiva Goswami summarizes very nicely in his commentary. He says, Anga Sangha Ityanena Praptam Madanodbhavajam Ujjam Varyati Gariyasi. This word here is used, Gariyasi, very glorious. So he says it's very glorious when the boon of qualified offspring, progeny, are the result of sexual union between the husband and wife. This is his gloss on the word Anga Sangha. What does Anga Sangha mean? Anga means body in general also. So Anga Sangha, connecting your limbs. This is what people do. So, but it's only glorious if it becomes Guna Prasavaha. And this is something that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wants to emphasize here. He's giving it as an alternative reading, but it's the alternative reading that Srila Prabhupada has chosen for this edition of Srimad Bhagavatam. Guna Prasavaha. There are some other readings there as well. So the qualities of the father and the mother will be born in the form of good children. And so she's essentially praying, therefore let this happen through our bodily union. And again, we have to do that. It's not like we're all Devaki Vasudev, that without even bodily union you can give birth. No, generally this is what they have to do. And they enjoy also in this way. So she's reminding him that you've made this promise and you should now fulfill that promise. Now, in his own purport, Srila Prabhupada writes here, as I said, closely paraphrasing Sridhar Swami. First thing Sridhar Swami said, Bhata Harshe. So the first thing Prabhupada says, Devahuti expressed her happiness by uttering the word Bhata. For she knew that her husband was in a highly elevated transcendental position and was under the shelter of Yoga Maya. Then he reminds us, what verse from Bhagavad Gita is Prabhupada paraphrasing here? He's talking about two Mayas, Yoga Maya and Mahamaya, and the great souls, they're under the protection of the divine energy. What verse is that? Mahamparta, Daivim Prakritim Ashrita. Yes, it means the same thing. So these are the two energies of the Lord. Now, Kardama Muni was clearly a very great soul, and therefore he was under the spiritual energy, which means he was directly connected with the Supreme Lord. The symptom of this is Krishna consciousness, constant engagement in devotional service. A person can look like a very saintly person. There are so many people on the internet now, and they have a long hair and beard, and they wear robes, and they twirl flowers and look very serene. But they're not necessarily God conscious. You find that out if you become their disciple and they start to exploit you in various ways. So, the symptom of being directly connected with the Supreme Lord, Prabhupada writes here in this purport, is Krishna consciousness, which means constant engagement in devotional service. Do we hear this also from Bhagavad Gita? What verse am I thinking of? Who knows? I like to test everybody just to keep them on their toes, because people don't read Prabhupada's books nowadays enough. Even in the 1970s, they didn't read Prabhupada's books. He complained about it. But now I think it's even worse. Nobody reads any book except Facebook. That's the only book that anybody reads now. So, where does Krishna say this? The symptom of somebody who's really Krishna conscious is that he engages in... I can't hear you. Okay, yeah, anyway. There are many verses in Bhagavad Gita, he says the same thing. So Devahuti knew this, and she was anxious to have a son by bodily union. It's very interesting if you compare Diti with her husband, Kashyap, and Devahuti with her husband, Kardama. They're very different consciousness. Anyway, so she's very high-minded, and she's therefore reminding her husband that, you also have an obligation. Neither one of them is thinking in terms of personal enjoyment, isn't it? Both of them are thinking, Devahuti is thinking, let me expand the glories of my husband and our family line. And how do we do that? By the normal thing that householders do. The fruit of household life is children. So she's thinking only in this, she has social consciousness. She's thinking, how to benefit the society, how to benefit our family in particular, within the society, like that. She's not just thinking, and Kardama Muni also, he's thinking, I have to take sannyas, I have to follow the system, I have to become Krishna conscious, I have to detach, but I also have to do my duty, and no doubt he will respond positively to her entreaty here, as we'll see in coming verses, that I have to do my duty as a householder and give her children. So this is another thing that Prabhupada very commonly said. Married life is not just meant for sex life, and it's especially meant for producing good progeny, because that's very necessary to preach Krishna consciousness. There are some householders, they make more devotees by their fruitive activities than by going on Sankirtan. One of my godbrothers introduced me to his children in this way. He said, this is my wife, these are the fruits of our activities. So anyway, Devahuti is very conscious of this, and she knew that her husband, she had faith in her husband. She had respect for her husband because her husband was respectable. And he was Krishna conscious. And it was very clear. So that's a good qualification. And these are the kinds of people who should be having children. Unfortunately, in modern day and age, people have children, Prabhupada says, like what? Cats and dogs. How do they just connect on the street? They see somebody good, they just, this is what they do. So this is not human life. This is human life. What Kardama Muni and Devahuti are doing. All right, so for a woman, it is a great ambition to have a son of the same quality as a highly qualified husband. Since she had that opportunity to have Kardama Muni as her husband, she also desired to have a child by bodily union. So these are some of the things that we can look at in this verse. As we said, Prabhupada, throughout his books and purports, you will notice, if you're reading very carefully and regularly, he has a very strong social conscience. And unfortunately for us, his social conscience is not the popular one. It's maybe not even very popular amongst ourselves. But it is definitely authorized, and it is the traditional social consciousness of duty to God and society and to oneself last. We know that there are different kinds of fruitive activities. There's nitya kriyas, the things you have to do every day, like rising early in the morning and taking a bath and being nice to people and doing sacrifice, austerity, charity. These are things you have to do every day. And then there are kama karmas also that you can do if you like. Marriage is one of those. You don't actually have to get married if you're a man. If you're a woman, it's a good idea. Very good idea. Because otherwise life is tough. So, but they're considered to be kamya karmas. Just things that you can do if you want to, but they're not obligatory. But on the other hand, to perform your varnashram duty, to perform your ordinary duties of just civilized decency, these things are obligatory on a human being. And what happens if we don't do them? Anybody know the verse I'm thinking of? It's from Hitopadesh, but Prabhupada quotes it regularly. Dharmasya hina pashubhi samana. Without this kind of dedication to a life that is based on Shastra and is aimed at spiritual progress and civilization, then a so-called human being, biologically correct human being, is no better than an animal. Here Prabhupada writes in his Bhagavad Gita purport, this is chapter 16, text number 7, very heavy purport actually if you read it very carefully. He says, in every civilized human society there are some set of scriptural rules and regulations which is followed from the beginning, especially among the Aryans, those who adopt the Vedic civilization and who are known as the most advanced civilized peoples. Those who do not follow the scriptural injunctions are supposed to be demons. Now, this is interesting. What is the definition of an atheist, according to the dictionary? According to an English dictionary, how do we define an atheist? Someone who doesn't believe in God. Now, according to Vedic literatures, what is the definition of an atheist? Somebody who doesn't accept Shastra. It's a very, it's overlooked, this distinction, but it is a distinction. In other words, you're not even on the map if you cannot accept Vedic injunctions and live accordingly. So, you're not even considered to be a bona fide human being. According to what Prabhupada is saying here. They're supposed to be demons. That's what he says. Therefore, it's stated here that, just for your information, what is the verse that I'm quoting? Pravrittim cha nevrittim cha janana vidurasuraha na shaucham napi chacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. It's not just Prabhupada's personal opinion. He's actually paraphrasing what Krishna says here in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna himself says, demons don't know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Na shaucham napi chacharo. They don't have good achar. They're not clean. They're not truthful, etc., etc., etc. And here Prabhupada writes, demons don't know the scriptural rules, nor do they have any inclination to follow them. Have we seen this? People don't know what the scriptures actually say, but even if you tell them what the scriptures say, they're not inclined to follow. This is modern society is like this. Most of them do not know them, and even if some of them know, they have not the tendency to follow them. They have no faith. Nor are they willing to act in terms of Vedic injunctions. Because it's one thing to speak Vedic injunctions, and it's another thing to follow them. So, this is what we have to be conscious of as well. The demons are not clean, either externally nor internally. One should always be careful to keep his body clean by bathing, brushing teeth, shaving, changing clothes, etc. As far as internal cleanliness is concerned, one should always remember the holy names of God and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As for behavior, Prabhupada continues, there are many rules and regulations guiding human behavior, such as Manu Samhita, which is the law of the human race. Even up to today, those who are Hindu follow the Manu Samhita. Laws of inheritance and other legalities are derived from this book. Now, in the Manu Samhita, it is clearly stated that a woman should not be given freedom. That does not mean that women are to be kept as slaves, but they're like children. Children are not given freedom, but that does not mean that they're kept as slaves. Demons have now neglected such injunctions, and they think that women should be given as much freedom as men. However, this has not improved the social condition of the world. You can ask Harvey Weinstein about that. Actually, a woman should be given protection at every stage of life. She should be given protection by the father in her younger days, and by the husband in her youth, and by the grown-up sons in her old age. This is proper social behavior according to the Manu Samhita. But modern age education has artificially devised a puffed-up concept of womanly life. Artificial and puffed-up concept. Therefore, marriage is practically now an imagination in human society. The social condition of women is thus not very good now. Although those who are married are in a better condition than those who are proclaiming their so-called freedom. The demons therefore do not accept any instruction which is good for society, and because they do not follow the experience of great sages and the rules and regulations laid down by the sages, the social condition of the demoniac people is very miserable. Actually, it's not just women. This is just what Prabhupada chose significantly to dilate on in this particular purport. Actually, somebody did a survey, did a statistical analysis of Srila Prabhupada's books. And they found that whenever Srila Prabhupada said something that is not directly based on his own predecessor acharyas, it would fall into one of three categories. One of them is Mayavad, the other one is women, and the other one is the spiritual master. These three things were very important to Srila Prabhupada. And we see that in today's verse, as well as the Bhagavad Gita passage that we've just quoted. But therefore I said, Srila Prabhupada has a very strong social conscience, but it's not the same strong social conscience that most social activists have in the modern day and age, and so it creates a lot of problems. But anyway, that's our problem. It's not Krishna's problem. It's not Prabhupada's problem. It's our problem, because we are the ones who have to represent Srila Prabhupada, and we have to expand Srila Prabhupada's good qualities in doing so. Otherwise, we're not really proper sons and daughters of Srila Prabhupada. Here it's stated, Guna Prasava, the qualities of the parents are to be expanded by the children. And Prabhupada points out, Stri means expansion. It's the women who actually do this more by nature. All right, well anyway, I'm just kind of rambling now, so maybe we should stop, but if anybody has any questions or any comments on these important points. Okay, there's several. Shyamachandra Prabhu.
Thank you. So in this verse, basically, Devahuti is requesting his husband to keep the promise of having the children after achieving this austerity, performing the austerities. Let's say, just a hypothetical question, like let's say if Kardama Muni denies the request to keep his promise, would he be having any fault? Would he be at fault for not keeping his promise if he denies not to keep his promise?
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. Actually, we find throughout our spiritual literatures, Srimad Bhagavatam and elsewhere, there are many, 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 many cases in which it seems as if devotees have received the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by keeping their promise. What are some examples? Off the top of your head, you must be thinking. Who kept his promise, even though it was difficult to do, and got Krishna's mercy as a result? Huh? Yeah, Bali Maharaj is one. Who else? I mean, really, we're talking about great souls, pure devotees, huh? Bhishma is another one. Anyone else? There are so many of them. Dhruva, Vasudeva, and Devaki. Every year, do you think it's very easy to submit your kids to somebody that you know is going to kill them? But they did it. And it seems as if he did it only to keep his promise. So, first point, keeping a promise is important. If you make a promise, you've got to keep that promise. All of us make promises when we're initiated, isn't it? We take vows, and we have to keep those vows. Prabhupada actually, even he went so far as to say, if you cannot follow these vows, then you make a vow and cannot follow it, you're not even a human being. Not even a decent person. What to speak of a devotee? So that's one thing. Second thing is that Kardama Muni, she's reminding him of his position as a great soul. In effect, she's telling us that he's such a great soul. He's not going to break his promise. He will follow. Would he be at fault if he did not follow? Well, we never want to say never, right? Because there are as many rules, there are exceptions. But in general, if one makes a promise, one has to fulfill that promise. And certainly if someone gets married, he has to perform his duties. We've seen sometimes people whimsically, they get married, or whimsically they take sannyas also. It happens that way also. And then, they're not serious. So maybe he wouldn't be completely at fault if he were to just go straight to sannyas, because that's the emphasis that's given. Self-realization is given. But really, he has to perform his duty. Swabhas has to.
Yeah, Prabhuji, thank you for a wonderful class. In reading the purport, there's an interesting thing that came up to me was that just the example or the power of Devahuti. In other words, when she married him, she already knew what the end result was going to be. And in the course of him agreeing to do his promise, then he left her with a child alone. Now, I think the setting was that they were in some kind of like really austere situation. Like there was no running water. There was no grocery store down the street.
Yeah. Well, of course, at this point, he's created the mansion, right?
Okay.
So she's okay in that way.
Okay, after that particular point. But I'm just thinking that what a great soul that she was.
Yes. This is the point.
In terms of her qualities were amazingly unbelievable.
Yeah, really they are. We should not fail to glorify Devahuti and her great character. I think it was Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, just a couple of verses ago in his commentary, he singles out this word, Nija Dharmadoha. Nija Dharmadoha, which means that you have gained your pure devotional service as a result of following your dharma so nicely. That's the implication, and he makes it very explicit in his commentary that this is another reason that Kardama has to keep his promise, because we don't make vows, we don't take vows very lightly, we don't make promises very cheaply, we don't take our obligations very casually. If we take these rules and regulations very casually, that is which mentality? Well, Dima and his Prabhupada has just said that, but generally Prabhupada says it's the sahajya mentality. You just, you think that all these things are just, not so important, or we're above that, or, this is the conception. Yeah, so that's why we have these examples, to teach us that these things are important, and your material life does matter, and your promises also matter, and your wife also matters, and your husband also matters. It all matters. It's all important. We cannot neglect anything. We find that Prabhupada, very often he says, this is the most important thing. And then the next day he goes somewhere else and he says something else is the most important thing. Because the fact of the matter, you ask someone like Shrutakirti or Hari Shari Prabhu, who traveled with Prabhupada and saw him do this every day, the fact of the matter is that Prabhupada considered everything to be the most important thing. The secret of success, yes. So yeah, you wanted to add something, Shachi?
Just want to ask.
Ah, yeah. Okay, there you go. If the son takes after the qualities of the mother, then look at Bhagavan Kapiladev and consider where he came from. I mean, that's the example. That's the Leela, at least, that's being carried out here. And so it's not that Devahuti is less important. And throughout the Bhagavatam, we also find these examples. Who else? Devaki, I mentioned, Vasudeva and Devaki. She had to deal with so many things. Living in a prison, surrendering all your kids to a murderer. You can't imagine how difficult that must have been. But she did it. So these examples should not be lost on us. And as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur pointed out in text number 8, this is the significance of the words Nija Dharma Doha. You can get this pure devotional service when you really imbibe these so-called sub-religious principles. It makes it a lot easier. That's also in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text 28, last verse of that chapter. Sachitanai.
Prabhu, it appears that most of the story of Devahuti and Kardama Muni is preordained in one sense, that the Lord will come here so everything will develop nicely. And Devahuti, Mataji, she is very qualified, highly humble, chaste, and all the good qualities. So everything is perfectly arranged. Now, a thought came to my mind about a different setting in the story, like in the Mahabharata, we had Satyavati, who everything was probably, practically speaking, resting under her shoulders, the whole responsibility of the kingdom, that she herself has to order or call Vyasadeva to come to have children, which the women were not highly qualified. And so,
you're talking about the fisherwoman, Satyavati.
yeah, and then I was thinking, was this also preordained that will happen like that? Because she is a unique woman in which I was wondering too, without any offense, and then I wonder if Chanakya Pandit would say something about her, or Prabhupada never mentioned about that too. She is at that time, at that particular time when the culture is so strongly about men, women, and then she happens to be like the one who, the whole responsibility, even Vishmadev was there. But you know what I'm saying?
That's why I said, we don't like to say never, because there's always exceptions. And if you look throughout Krishna's Leela even, I mean, it's just full of dysfunctional family situations. That, the sister is going to be killed by her own brother at her wedding day, and then later on he does kill all of her children, and just really heavy, completely counter to the ideals that we hear in the Shastra, which we're supposed to follow. But sometimes life is like that. Sometimes it happens. And I'm going to assume, I have to say, this is an assumption only, that this is why the Lord's Leelas play out like this sometimes, because our own lives play out like this also. It's never the way we plan it. Anyone have this experience that your life has turned out exactly as you planned? Almost never. Almost never. So we don't know what the material energy is going to throw at us, but we do know what our predecessors have done in similar circumstances, because Bhagavatam is full of narrations about the Lord and his devotees. And some of those narrations are ideal, and some of them are not ideal. That is to say, we hear things about Devahuti in this case. We also hear things about, say, Chitraketu, who maybe made some mistakes and had to pay for them. So, it's both the lessons are there. All right? Okay. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.